Hello there, I'm Rupert Lowe, leader of Restore Britain. We're fighting a local election campaign in Great Yarmouth under the banner of Great Yarmouth First, which is part of Restore Britain. It's absolutely essential that we prove the model there. We're all going to be there on the 2nd of May and the 7th of May. So those of you who feel inclined to come and help us, it's a really crucial day. Those 2 days are really crucial. So come along, help us. Let's get Great Yarmouth rocking and rolling, and let's show the rest of the country what can be achieved when local people take control of their local politics with a little bit of short-term assistance from everybody else who supports Restore Britain. So thank you all very much.
Hello and welcome back to the Restore Britain podcast. My name is Charlie Downs. I'm the Campaigns Director and Spokesman at Restore Britain, and I'm very pleased today to be joined by my good friend Lewis Brackpool, our Director of Investigations, and our leader, Rupert Lowe, MP. It's been quite a while since we last did one of these. It's been a number of months, and in that time, a great deal has happened, not least our conversion from a movement into a fully fledged national political party. So we're going to be discussing all of that and more on today's show. But gentlemen, very good to be with you again.
And you.
Good to see you, Charlie.
So let's talk about where Restore Britain is as a movement, whether it was on your various motions and letters in Parliament, mobilising a huge amount of support, both within the Commons and within the public for our petitions, putting out policy papers, all sorts of things which were doing good to advance the discourse in our country on the most essential and pressing issues of our time, from rape gangs to deportations and all of these other things that those within the political and media establishment are very scared to touch, but which, Rupert, you have taken the lead in tackling. Now we are a fully fledged political party with over 130,000 members. We are the fourth largest party in the country by membership, larger than the Conservative Party. And I think it's safe to say that we are, I think, the most vibrant and energetic movement in the country right now. Rupert, as leader, how do you think it's all going?
Well, Charlie, you're quite right. We set Restore Britain up after the attempted political assassination by Farage, Youssef and Anderson and Reform, which failed. And we, having set it up, we decided to do it as a movement, not a party initially. And we decided to do that because we wanted to unite, not divide initially. And I think that strategy has worked. I've got on very well with a lot of people in Parliament. We weren't a threat. Ultimately, the Tories put me on the Public Accounts Committee, which has, I think, helped us. I think we've contributed greatly to questioning the gross inefficiencies of the civil service. And on my way here, I bumped into a fellow who's on secondment to the Home Office, and he says it's a complete shambles. They can't get anything done. Human rights lawyers everywhere, blocking everything they try and do. And basically, it just shows you how the British taxpayers' money is being, as I say, spunked up against the wall by a bunch of incompetents who have never done anything, never created anything, and all they deal in is what I call cheap, short-term deliverables, which they can announce to a hungry partisan media, who, as you know, are hardly covering us at all, which is quite extraordinary given what we've achieved. And not planning long-term, not having a strategy which is going to deliver for Britain. And basically, it's a circus. It's a corrupt circus. And as I've questioned before, I think very much of it is actually in the hands of organised crime. I think there's the COVID splurge, which I think was a succession of very bad decision-making, resulted in people getting used to printed money being hurled around, and when you start hurling money around, a bit like you get the transfers from Milan and northern Italy down to southern Italy, you get bad attacks of sticky fingers. And I think that's exactly what's been happening in Britain. A lot of people have enriched themselves at the expense of the taxpayer, and most of the time it's completely and utterly unearned and undeserved. So I think we decided we were going to have a look. We were going to unite. We were going to play our part in Parliament, which I think, as you say, we've done with the rape gangs, the questions. I think we've moved the Overton window with, obviously, the rape gangs and the rape gang inquiry. mass deportations. I mean, people are talking about that now. I think we've completely changed the political dial in terms of what people are prepared to talk about. We've also encouraged the British people that if they want their country back, they've got to adopt the same attitude that we do. And the key three words are, when you're called a racist, or you're called a bigot, or you're called right-wing, which I don't even think we are, I just think we're the common sense party, the three key words are, I don't care.
Yes.
So I think we've sort of done that everywhere. I think we've produced policy documents. We have shown that we're a serious party. I'm delighted we've got young people like yourself and Lewis and other incredibly able young people who are participating, because ultimately it's your generation that's been badly let down, and it's your generation who's not being given the opportunity by a very selfish collection of baby boomers who have accumulated vast wealth, again, very often undeserved. They are now focused on not taking risk, on basically protecting themselves for their retirement and locking the money up. And you know, things like the triple lock are just playing further to their strength.
I think this is the thing, Rupert. I mean, I don't know how aware you are of this, but when Lewis and I were in Great Yarmouth over this past weekend campaigning for Great Yarmouth First, which we will get onto in a little while, the number of young people that were up there, followers of yourself and Restore, who are so grateful to you for what you're doing and for what we're doing as a party, actually giving them a voice and some representation in a political system that they feel has completely abandoned them, especially young men, it's quite remarkable to see. And the I don't care thing, I mean, that has become such a meme among young people, among our supporters, that it's just brilliant, because for our entire lives, I mean, certainly for my entire life, that label of racist, of bigot, sexist, and all these sorts of things has been used to shut down honest conversations about the state of the country, how we're being governed, the direction that we're traveling in, what the future looks like. It's been used to censor people. And so you almost giving us permission as a generation to stare those accusations in the face and say, I don't care. I don't care. It's a very powerful thing.
And never be frightened of speaking the truth. In the end, society has been deluding itself, living a lie. So what we have to do is to ensure that nobody is frightened to speak the truth, speak their mind. Be prepared to go out on a limb on your own. If you don't think something's right, say so. That's the essence of free speech. You may be wrong, you may not be wrong, but if you don't speak out about it, it doesn't create the necessary debate to get at the truth. So I think that's the key there. And credit to all of our supporters who have seen that we're trying to do, I think, the right thing for Britain long term, not short term. And we don't want to play the game that a deficient two-party, putridly sort of stale parliament has basically perpetrated on the British people. We want to change that. But you don't do that by basically undermining everybody. What you've got to try and do is win the intellectual argument, which I think we started to do. Then what changed was that Kemi Badenoch, in my view, she's got a very difficult hand to play. I think the Tories, as I said earlier, are very broken. They've got the Cameronite One Nation Tories sitting above a collection of young, very able Tory MPs who are arguably, I think, in my view, more politically sound. They aren't trying to emulate Tony Blair and the people who destroyed Britain. And I think we should talk about Mandelson in a minute, which is the subject of Prime Minister's questions, or will be when and has been the subject of the parliamentary agenda for the last couple of days. I think the Tories have got a very difficult hand to play. And Kemi, to be fair to her, has played quite a good hand with not many good cards in it. And she effectively took the whip hand, and I thought that was a clever move. But what that meant is that on balance, that there was going to continue the Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, the lunatic Polanski, who for the life of me, I can't believe anybody supports when I see him dancing in Trafalgar Square holding his crutch next to a bloke in a sort of gimp suit. I just think to myself, this is just a complete farce. So anybody can take him seriously. His economic policies would end in self-immolation in about 5 seconds. And I just don't think he's got a clue. He talks in complete, he's completely utterly ignorant. But anyway, so we've got that. And I thought to myself, well, that is not going to change in any way now. Had there been a sort of reshuffle and a lot of sort of change, it would have given an opportunity for us to sort of look and see where it was all going. So we decided to launch the party, which we did on a freezingly cold night in Great Yarmouth.
You can say that again.
Couldn't
feel my feet.
I was deliberating speaking in my overcoat, but I got so cold I couldn't feel my hands or my feet. And every time I spoke, my breath was firing in a sort of mist-like projection towards the crowd. And credit to everyone, the 900 or 1,000 people who turned up, credit to them, because it really was freezing cold. It was a great evening. I think you were both there. We were given a huge reception by the people of Great Yarmouth. So we launched the party. We've got Electoral Commission approval. People often ask me why. And by the way, so we've got Electoral Commission approval, and our membership, as you said, Charlie, is now heading for 135,000. I think we're sort of 131,000 today, something like that. I haven't checked it this morning. But that's fantastic, and credit to everyone who's signed up. I mean, we are, as you say, on the face of it, the 4th largest party by membership. However, I would like to see an audit of the Reform Party membership, because I call it the Hotel California membership. It's very easy to check in, but it's a lot more difficult to check out.
That is what they say.
I'm not sure that their membership numbers actually reflect reality, and I think I would call them to do a transparent justification of their membership, which we could easily do. Ours is absolutely 100% bona fide.
Yeah.
So, obviously we're over twice as big as the Lib Dems, bigger than the Tories.
Yeah.
Obviously we're heading for Labour, the Greens, and as I say, Reform, questionable.
So
Hotel
on that
California
point,
membership, how do we know that's right?
So you talk about our membership, you talk about the people that we're bringing in. We've now got over 400 constituency branches up and running. And Lewis, you have been across much of the setup of those branches. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who it is that has been applying to actually get off the sofa and get out and work for us at the local level?
To reflect from the very beginning of transferring from an organisation to a political party, I mean, sitting, like we were saying, sitting in that very cold theatre on the pier, fantastic environment, everyone incredibly electric in the room, and actually heated up the place from the speeches, which is great. And being at the back with your parliamentary staff and then watching the ticker go up as we launched that video, I mean, I predicted that this would go down incredibly well, but it's gone beyond my expectation.
I mean, 42 million views.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I mean, the most successful piece of political marketing of the 21st century, bar none.
Everybody is talking
Not
about
covered
it.
in the media at all.
Not at all.
This is the funny thing. We're not being covered in the media as much as we'd like, but also we are being spoken about the most across social media, and that's incredibly important. And so from that, when starting up the branch organisers throughout constituencies, I believe we are tapping into around 400 now that have been set up in such a short space of time. It has, from your launch video, has galvanised so many young people, so many from demographics from ages 18 to even 100. I mean, I set up the Horsham branch not too long ago. The youngest we had was 18 that turned up, and the eldest turned 100 the next day.
Yeah.
So we are tapping into a demographic vast beyond any other political party.
I don't think people realise, Lewis, that we've got a lot of young people. That's a big part of our support
massive.
base. People just don't believe it.
It's there.
Indisputable, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And to add, when we was there, Charlie actually asked the crowd. I mean, it was so big. I expected around 40 people to turn up because of the email replies, but we got around 120, 130 turn up. I didn't have enough chairs. People were sitting on the floor.
And this was Horsham, which is currently a Lib Dem constituency.
Yes, exactly. To add, when Charlie asked can you raise your hand if you've ever been to a political meeting before? 90 to 95% put their hand
Never
up.
been.
Never been.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yes, never been. So 90 to 95% put their hand up to say that they've never been to such a thing before. We are galvanizing voters that haven't voted in around 30 years, 20 years, 10 years.
I agree.
Even new voters coming into the fray now. So when people talk about splitting the vote, X, Y, and Z, we're not only taking the votes, in my view, but we are galvanizing the disenfranchised that want to vote for a party. But now that we are outside of the establishment fray, we're not part of what reform has molded into the Tory Light Party. People have now found a home politically.
We're creating voters. We're not splitting them.
People cried at after the speeches, after it was launched. People were crying. People were coming up to me straight after, like in tears, saying, "Finally, we have an option."
But I think, Lewis, the key here is, and this is what we've, as you quite rightly say, we've sort of achieved a lot on the social media front, across all the platforms. I mean, whether that's TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, whether it's Facebook, whether it's X, we've covered that, and people are following us there. But there's a whole collection of people who haven't necessarily heard of us because they're not doing social media. So setting up the branches is so important.
Super important.
But the most important thing of all, and I think it's really encouraging that you say these people have turned up, and I've seen it, people who have been disaffected with the, as I say, the sclerotic two-party system, which is why I don't think either Labour or the Tories can win the next election. And I think we've got to see, if we're going to get our country back, we can't do everything as a small group of people. We've got to have the British people coming in and starting to help us do the heavy lifting. And it's only in numbers from ground up who really support and want their country back, who want long-term policies, who want long-term planning, who don't mind the fact that we may have to take a step back in terms of our economic well-being to put in the foundations, which is what Victorian Britain did, to actually build prosperity and actually work and justify prosperity and involve young people in new business formations and actually create things through releasing the entrepreneurial spirit of the British people.
Absolutely.
And that's why I was actually so delighted last weekend to see the reflexive response of a whole load of people who turned up. You were both in Great Yarmouth at the weekend, turn up and actually start to do and help with the heavy lifting.
Yes.
Yeah. We've got to have that. We cannot as a small team, that people can't sit back and just watch us carry the burden like Charles Atlas. We can lead it, we can drive it, we can help people understand what needs to be done. But in the end, the active participation of people like you're talking about now is absolutely crucial to us.
Well, shout out quickly to the volunteer in Horsham who has done 35 entire roads in Horsham in 3.5 weeks. Leafleting alone.
So I mean, this is the thing. Like the enthusiasm and passion that certainly I'm seeing among our membership when I'm going to these branch meetings, which I've been to several of now, is just unbelievable. And to add to what you said about the Horsham branch meeting, that question is one that I've asked at every one of these meetings. I've said, for how many of you is this your first political meeting? And in every case, it's been 70, 80, 90% of hands going up. So we are tapping into a demographic that has not been served.
I'm told somebody was even had their trainers on and was jogging around with leaflets.
That's right. Yeah, in Great Yarmouth. That is correct.
Is that right?
It was Aaron. Yeah. No. Yeah. That was very, very impressive. But this is the point: is we are activating a constituency that hasn't been served by the political establishment for decades, and as such, we are seeing a massive amount of enthusiasm, which was, made real, made visual in Great Yarmouth over this past weekend, where we had hundreds of volunteers from all across the country descending upon poor old Great Yarmouth.
Not right. Fantastic constituency, Charlie.
No, I know, but I don't know that they were ready for so many patriots to come and stomp the streets. But no, I mean, it was a hugely successful weekend. Lewis and I were both up there, and I thought we'd now talk a little bit about how that went, and more broadly, why we are choosing to contest the local elections in Great Yarmouth, but nowhere else. Because this is a question that has been coming up a lot. And so, Rupert, I'd like you to explain our strategy.
We discussed this a lot, and we, as you say, we launched in February. So we concluded that any sort of historical army which spreads itself too thinly and tries to charge on too far gets its supply routes cut off. So what we decided is that we would stand in Great Yarmouth in the 9 county council seats, and we decided we'd stand, there is actually a borough council by-election, and we're standing there too. And by quirk of fate, that borough council by-election actually gives us the casting vote on the borough council. Now, there's 2 things I think we need to clarify. So we decided we weren't going to, and we've had a lot of people who want to stand, not only in the Senate and in other branches, but we decided let's prove the model. So I think there's a massive opportunity for Great Yarmouth to show what can be done when local people come forward, and all of our candidates come from Great Yarmouth, so they know the area, they know the local people, they know the issues that have got to be dealt with. And as you know, we've been doing a lot on local issues. The team we've got in Great Yarmouth is right on top of a lot of the issues, and we're trying to make a big difference. We're trying to encourage people to come to Great Yarmouth. We do our very best for the people of Great Yarmouth. But this is a model which I think we can show other people. And if we're successful and we win either 9, which I'm aiming for, because I don't like to lose any seats. I think I'd like to see a block of Great Yarmouth first seats on whatever homunculus-like unitary authority they end up creating, which in my view is complete and utter lunacy. But that's what Labour seem to be intent on doing. I, as you know, I always say if you put one bit of shit together with another bit of shit, you just get a big bit of shit. So I honestly, I think you want accountable local government. And the best we can do is get a block of votes, a block of councillors on that county council, whatever homunculus, as I say, appears, and then we actually do represent the interests of the local people. Now, if Great Yarmouth can forge the way and show the rest of the country what can be done when the local people get involved in local politics and start to take back, so rather than leaving it to this 2-party system which has failed, i.e. the Tories and Labour, and the Lib Dems to a lesser extent. This is real people taking control of their own local democracy. And that, for me, is a very powerful message. So I think if we can prove that model, then we show other people what can be done if they choose to do the same thing. So we're standing in Great Yarmouth first. As it happens, I think it's a fantastic name. It does what it says on the tin.
Quite.
And local people can associate with that. So the key, though, is not the name, but people ask me why. That's why. The key is that we want to show people what can be done when local people and local democracy actually starts to function, in my view, as it should, not as it has been crafted by a political system which, in my view, has become unrepresentative and corrupt.
So what do you say to the likes of Matt GPT Goodwin, who say that Restore Britain is an unserious party because we are only standing 9 candidates at these local elections, whereas Reform UK are standing thousands? Matt, by the way, Goodwin, by the way, who is tipped to be Reform's candidate for Great Yarmouth in 2029.
Well, that's the rumour we heard. And we're hearing also that they reserved a pub called the Rumbold Arms for the local campaigning, didn't turn up and didn't pay the bill. So I think people,
allegedly,
people locally, that won't help their case locally. And I think probably Matt Goodwin, who writes some good stuff, I think some of the stuff he writes on his Substack is good. But I think he's half a cut above himself. I think he used to be a sort of left-wing academic. Would I entirely trust him? Very definitely not. Do I think he's a bad guy? Probably not. But I suspect he thought, I'll go and, in a sort of cocksure way, decide I'm going to announce I'm going to stand in Great Yarmouth. I'll go and lead the charge in the local council, lobbying. And they took one look and decided there were too many Great Yarmouth First signs everywhere, and the general force in Star Wars terms was definitely not with them.
Well,
but if he wants to stand against me in Great Yarmouth, look, everything's fair in love and war. by all means stand. But I mean, he failed in Gorton and Denton. I suspect he would fail again in Great Yarmouth, but I can't be certain of that.
This is the point, though. I mean, Lewis, you know better than anybody on the team just how long and sophisticated and detailed a process it is to vet candidates for, even just being a branch organizer. So the idea that we could, after 3 weeks of Electoral Commission approval, registration, the idea that we could stand thousands of candidates, I think is just for the birds. And so the people that are dishonestly accusing us of bottling it by not standing at these elections, I think are very silly.
We haven't bottled it, Charlie. We've got a plan.
Exactly.
And that's the plan. And I think what we've all achieved, and you've all played a huge part in that, it's not just me, unlike Reform, it's not just sort of, somebody sitting at the top of the tree trying to take all the glory. It's a collective effort. And I think what we've achieved, and to be popping into the national polls, I mean, as we do a national poll ourselves, which we effectively do properly, where we're actually named, we're getting somewhere between 8 and 10%, and that's in quite a wide poll, and it's a proper poll. But then when YouGov come out and we poll 4%, and I noticed there was one, they said we polled 3% -1, as if they're sort of pleased themselves. But the fact of the matter is, we are not named on that poll. We still lurk in other, and people actually have to specify that they're going to vote for us, whereas the other parties are actually named, and it's much easier to select them.
Yes.
So I think until we get a proper fair poll, which obviously they don't want to do, people will continue to underestimate the size of our support. And the more and more local people who agree with what we're doing, and real proper people, and actually start, as you said, Lewis, to come back into politics, I think the polls will probably in the short term understate the level of our support. And I quite like that. And I think also, the fact we're not being covered by the media, a lot of people I talk to do not like that. They don't like unfairness. British people like fairness. And, we're supposed to have a BBC that is, in my view, as you know, monopolistic, but it's supposed to report with complete impartiality. That's how it was set up. That's why it's a monopoly. It was supposed to effectively represent fairness and impartiality. It doesn't do that. So we haven't had any calls from the BBC. We've obviously had a bit of local coverage, but nothing nationally. The GB News is just Nigel Farage Broadcasting Corp, as far as I can see. So in a way, they should be telling everybody that. And I'm amazed that Ofcom hasn't had a.
Can I just say there as well, Rupert? I mean, I think it's so incredible that you've obviously been blacklisted from GB News.
Obviously,
and we know this for a fact now after the admission of Dr. David Bull. But before we launched Restore as a party, I was being invited on GB News 4 times a week. I had a show with GB News.
You heard from recently?
And I have not had a single call since we launched as a party, apart from the 1 a.m. slots, which, I'm happy to do.
I was asked on the 1 a.m. slot, and they said, of course, we asked you on. Well, that was a 1 a.m. slot when I was busy doing something else.
And it's just incredible.
Probably sleeping.
Yes, indeed. It's incredible, the nakedness of the partiality at places like GB News. I mean, I find it astonishing.
Well, it's disgraceful when they're set up as a sort of free speech platform to challenge the BBC being partial.
Yes.
So I'm afraid they fairly quickly slipped into bad ways. I thought it was very interesting, actually, this week, as you probably saw, that Elon Musk came out and said he thought that Nigel Farage was managed opposition.
I saw that.
Well, I think he's right.
Yes.
And he was right about what he said earlier last January. A year ago last January, which was the genesis of a lot of the issue between Nigel and I. And I think he's very right now. He's a very prescient man. And it's quite clear to me that, over time, I think the establishment realizes that probably the two-party formula, which has let us down so badly, the British people aren't going to support that anymore. That's gone. Labour, after we released the rape gang inquiry, how anyone will be able to vote Labour ever again. It's so shocking what's been happening. I mean, to put your morals basically beneath your sort of need for votes to give yourself power, I think is just morally reprehensible. So I actually think, we are genuinely what we appear to be. We are trying to represent a better, fairer Britain run by people who actually put the British people, the British agenda, and British long-term prosperity at the top of the agenda. I don't see anybody else doing that. But I think he is very definitely the, if you like, person who's designed to attract the votes from the disaffected two-party system and mop them up. And increasingly, he is hiring what I call failed Tories. I mean, Nadeem Zahawi, Nadine Dorries, you know, all these people who were part of the failure of the Tory government under Boris, which had an opportunity to change things. You know, Jenrick, Suella, who I have respect for, she's clever, but they were all part of that. You know, the Bibi Stockholm, Jenrick and Suella signed off on that. So all you need now is Boris, and you've got Boris's old cabinet back. I'm just waiting for the announcement that he's coming back. But
don't put it past them, Rupert.
So look, I think genuinely some of the stuff they've done is strategically flawed, and I think the British people can see that, and they don't want a sort of rehashed Tory party. They want a fresh parliament, of fresh people who are going to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth, I'm afraid, isn't going to be necessarily good news in the short term, because these people have been abusing the British taxpayer, and I see it every day on the Public Accounts Committee. Billions and billions of pounds disappearing in misguided welfare, and then incompetence on a scale you just can't believe. And these are people who are highly paid with huge pensions, and, you know, the civil service needs to be completely trimmed. AI needs to come in a huge way. And we need to get back to a society where people interface with each other. We get rid of all these stupid rules and regulations. We chop the law's legs off and bring them back to size, because they're far too big for their boots at the moment. You know, judges and barristers and lawyers, they're not creators. They pork barrel a living on the back of productive Britain. They're parasites, but they've inserted themselves absolutely everywhere, and they're basically robbing productive Britain blind.
Yes.
The trouble is that the parasite is about to kill the host animal, which is our country.
Yes.
And we can't allow that to happen. We've got to stop it now, and it's got to happen before 29. If these what I call dishonest people continue to organise and run Britain and feather the nests of people who are not deserving, I think it'll be too late to restore it. I don't even know if it's too late now. And people say to me, I think you're too late. Well, I said, it may be. I don't know for sure. But I'm damn well going to have a go. And I think that's what everybody wants. And we've got to collectively try and do that.
We are an 11th hour nation. So, you know, the British especially are very all last minute when things look almost over, and we always claw it back. So that's the beautiful part of our history. Going back on coverage and what we're building at Restore Britain, it's interesting with not just the polling, us trying to push for us to be prompted, coverage from mainstream press. I think that we are really putting a lot of pressure on these entities to really cover us fairly and to cover us extensively, considering we are the largest, or the fourth largest party by membership in the entire country. And to understand as well what we're building behind the scenes, infrastructure-wise, with the branches, this is no easy walk in the park. This is something that we have managed to build in just 2 months, roughly, since its inception as a party, which would have taken 2 years for any other party.
Yeah, well, which took Reform much longer than us.
It took them 4 years.
And it must be because of the incredibly heavy-handed approach that party, by all accounts, takes to their local
I think that's right, Charlie. I think our approach is different. We want to select people and delegate to them. They know their local area. They know their local branch, and the majority of people are decent people, and they want the same as we want. Now, we're obviously going to get some issues, because you cannot set up, as you say, Lewis, 400 branches and not end up with 1 or 2 issues. But I don't mind that. We've issued guidance to people as to what we would like them to do and how we would like them to approach it, but we haven't issued diktat.
No.
I think the problem with a lot of what Reform's been doing, and I saw this when I was in there, is you had this dictatorial, centralized sort of a structure which was extremely punitive to anybody who was doing their best but made a genuine error. And we just don't want that. What we want is to empower people locally and let them effectively emulate what we end up doing in Great Yarmouth. Because Great Yarmouth's going to be, I think, the leader to show people how they can do it. And if they then take control and they people tend to want to do the right thing for their area, and we've got to empower them to do that. So that, I think, is the philosophical difference between us and reform. And I don't want to be dictatorial. As I said, we cannot do this unless we bring the British people with us and we actually get their help and they embrace what we're doing and become enthusiastic about it. And that's why it's so exciting to see people coming forward. And, for our members who are watching, the two key dates, Charlie, are the 2nd of May and the 7th of May.
Yes.
Those are the two dates when we are preparing for the Great Yarmouth First elections. And as many people who can get there and help us, that is going to effectively be the stormtroopers to deliver the model which effectively other people can then follow and emulate.
That is essential, that as many of our, if you believe in what we're trying to do at Restore Britain, as Rupert said earlier in the show, there's only so much that we as a small team can achieve when we're trying to do something national. We need our members, our supporters, those of you who believe in our mission and what we're trying to do, to, get off the sofa and come out and campaign with us. I mean, it's a lot of fun. We were up there over the weekend.
Fantastic.
We're going to be going back up there very soon.
Yeah.
Between now and the 7th of May, we're going to have hundreds, possibly thousands of our members descending upon Great Yarmouth to campaign. And it's really that's going to, I think, shift the balance, not just in Great Yarmouth, but nationally. Because as you say, Rupert, from the perspective of the mainstream media, we've been met with nothing but a conspiracy of silence. Because I think that they definitely know about us. They definitely know the threat that we pose to their hegemony. But they are, I think, quite conspicuously not covering us. And I'll tell you what I also think. There is a reason that you see headlines about Farage day in, day out. One of those reasons is that he is a significant national political figure. He is leading the party that is, on paper, topping the polls at the moment, obviously.
But on the decline.
But if he was genuinely a threat to the political and media establishment that's run this country into the ground, he would be receiving the same kind of treatment that we are, which is silence.
Correct.
But the fact that he is put before the British people on a daily basis, the fact that his name is in the headlines and the chattering classes are endlessly talking about him, tells you that he is one of them.
Because Elon summed it up in 2 words: managed opposition.
Exactly. So yes, that is very important. That if you support us, come up to Great Yarmouth for a weekend. It's a beautiful town.
By the way, we should say, Charlie, we have no issue with reform supporters.
No, obviously not.
Many
of them have
reform
come over to us.
supporters are good people.
Yeah.
They have they can't be blamed for the way in which the reform has evolved. So they're good people, and they're all very welcome to come and join us. When the light shines in, we're here. So that's the message to all of them.
Yes. No, I totally agree. And many people who were once reform supporters, like myself, are now with Restore Britain, which is not surprising, because I think in the eyes of many people, we are what reform promised to be, which is a genuinely anti-establishment, radical option for a British people that have simply had enough of the way things have been going for the last few decades.
Not a rehashed Tory party.
Indeed. So with that, I think we'll move on to some questions, because we've had some questions from our audience. We'll start off. We've just answered this question. Why should people come to Great Yarmouth? Because if you support us and if you want to see us win, Great Yarmouth is the proof of concept. Great Yarmouth is the test case. And if we can do well up there and show that where we stand, we win, and where we win, we deliver for local people, I think that will bode very well for our national prospects. And as you say, Rupert, if we can roll out that model in every constituency, I think that the people looking at their options at local and national elections will think, well, finally, somebody who's actually listening to me, somebody from the local area who understands the local issues. Because this is the other thing. We got to know many of the candidates who are standing in Great Yarmouth over the weekend. We were campaigning with Glenn Hurren.
Good man.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And many of them, both in Great Yarmouth and nationally at the branch level, many are people, Rupert, I would say, quite similar to yourself, in that they are not in politics for the money or the status. In Glenn's case, for example, he's a guy who's already had a successful career.
Yeah.
He's made his money.
Yeah.
And he's in it purely because he is a man of Great Yarmouth who loves his town and who wants to do right by it.
The overwhelming response, I was genuinely shocked. You know, knocking on doors, speaking to everyday people, handing the letter from yourself to constituents and asking about, obviously, their postal vote and whether they would consider voting Great Yarmouth first. Overwhelmingly positive. Unbelievable. I had two lovely ladies who came out, and this was a massive concern throughout the entire constituency. It was, many politicians say one thing, but they don't action. And that was the consistent topic of the area. And we explained, well, I totally agree with you. This is the reason why. I was with Harrison Pitt at the time, going out campaigning with him. And we were saying, this is the reason why we got up and got out and started getting involved in politics, is because it's the same thing happening over and over again. And they said, well, we're considering voting reform. And we said, well, it's totally up to you who you vote for. We don't own your votes, and neither do they. But what we will say is that the same party that decided to bring on the establishment that it claimed to be fighting against, this is the reason why Great Yarmouth First / Restore Britain exists. And they said, all right, we'll vote for you then.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of the responses from people who were saying, I'm thinking of voting reform, I'm not sure. But then straight after, just a quick conversation and just to explain, it's up to you who you decide to vote for at the end of the day. That's democracy. But the Uni Party and its absorption of reform and various others is the reason why we're in this mess in the first place.
Yes.
And I think the British people won't forget that this time.
They won't.
I think they've had enough of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, the exciting thing is all our candidates are local people.
Yes.
I think I'm right in saying other parties don't have the same.
Well, that's not the case for reform.
No.
In Great Yarmouth, we know
No.
that. So on this topic then, a question from a viewer. What is your strategy for tapping into voter apathy?
Well, I think we're already tapping into voter apathy, Charlie. I mean, if you look at the people who are coming to us, and, you know, we're often accused of splitting the vote. But we're seeing from the numbers we're getting from memberships, these are people who haven't voted for a very long time because they've actually become disaffected with British politics. And I don't blame them, because whoever they voted for, we got the same nonsense being promulgated. You know, whether it's DEI, whether it's, you know, wokery, whether it's all sorts
Mass
of
immigration.
Mass immigration. It didn't make any difference. It just kept happening, and human rights lawyers kept enriching themselves, and the British people were increasingly badly served. So I think a lot of people listen to what we're doing. They watch the enthusiasm of the young team and the young people who are supporting us, and they are coming forward because they are seeing something that they actually feel they might be able to believe in.
Well, I've got to say
I don't
another.
think we can say we've won them over, but they are coming to us in big numbers. Now, obviously, we're taking some votes from Reform. I think the Tories, Labour, and I think we'll increasingly take votes from Labour in the red wall seats, where, you know, as I say, when the results of the rape gang inquiry come out, I can't see how anybody, however socialist you are, can ever vote for a party that's fundamentally been dishonest with the British people. And the scale of the rape gangs across the country, everywhere, has been kicked into the long grass, because Labour fear that if they actually attack it and deal with it, which any morally sound government would do, it will affect their vote. And I just think that is incredibly dishonest and incredibly unfair on the most vulnerable white working class girls who have been effectively suffering the brunt of this vileness.
Yes.
So that I think, you know, we can win their votes. Lib Dems are getting a few of them. I mean, the Lib Dems on the whole are pretty unsound, but we've got one or two who are creeping to us. So some Tories are coming to us, but the Tory vote is pretty rock solid, on a bedrock, in my view, of somewhere between 15 and 20% of the vote. So that's a very loyal group of people. It's a lot smaller group than it used to be. Given, you know, Boris's complete and utter failure to deliver with a majority which would have allowed him to completely changed the way we're governed, and he singularly failed to do that. In fact, made it worse by bringing in a whole load of people legally, as well as allowing illegal people to not only arrive but live here and continue to live here.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, indeed. And just on that, something you mentioned there, on this topic of young people, I mean, I have to say, something that did come up when we were in Great Yarmouth speaking to volunteers that had come from other parts of the country who were under the age of 30. It is a consistent theme that people from that demographic, like myself, feel represented by Restore Britain because, to put it bluntly, people like me and Lewis, we are young, and we're seen as being a kind of central part of the party. And there's no other party in the country that does that. I mean, the other parties will talk a good game about serving young people. Reform have tried to make hay on that issue, as have the Greens, for that matter. But none of them will actually give any kind of decision-making power to anybody under the age of 40, is generally how it feels.
But I think, Charlie, also what we're doing, and we've started that process with our document on mass deportations, which is very clear. It went into the constitutional reasons why there's an issue, how we resolve those, and then how we deal with, obviously, the deportations that are necessary. And we've actually looked at everything, and we've shown a deliverable plan, which people can now question. Done the same for British pubs. We are producing documents now on, obviously, the British energy sector. That's going to be a big document. I'm very keen that we get that out as soon as we can, but we're doing a lot of work on it. And that's going to involve, obviously, showing people that we've got these natural resources. We're not using them because we've got this sort of lunatic agenda from Ed Miliband to ignore our natural advantages and try and concentrate on renewable energy, which at the moment we're paying wind farms huge amounts of money to turn off. So the infrastructure is not the issue. But here we are. We've got this opportunity to not only rescue Aberdeen, which is dying and withering on the vine. We've got huge experience and aptitude there. We've got oil and gas. We've got fracking gas. We've got coal if we have to use it. We don't need to use that, although Germany is firing up their coal-fired power stations again. And I think that responsible Britain secures itself, obviously, for energy which is not going to be interrupted by wars in the Middle East or anything else. And then it uses its natural resources, and we don't, we're not drilling wells in the North Sea, whereas Norway, I think last year drilled 400, we drilled 0. You've got some incredibly rich waters off Shetland, which are still holding oil and gas, which we could exploit. We've got 2 oil and gas fields. We've got Cambo, and we've got Rosebank. They're just being left because the Labour government has got these windfall taxes that just don't make it worth either looking for oil and gas or indeed exploiting oil and gas, which is bonkers. So that's a big paper, and I think that's going to come out soon. We're doing a big economic paper which will show people how we want to help to start to achieve, if you like, the empowerment of the people and the diminishing of the state, which is key. So that's going to be a big paper. We've got a paper on student debt. As you know, we're going to scrap IHT. We publicly stated that, and we produced, I think, a little document on that. We're going to raise the VAT threshold. There are all sorts of things, and I think what we can now do is start to show people in documents that we formally put forward that we mean business, and that we are capable of coming up with policies, and that we do understand that, unlike Liz Truss, we can't just offer unfunded tax cuts. We've got to show people, because if you upset the international bond markets when you're when you've got huge debts like we have, and you spook international investors, your currency starts to collapse, your bond yields start to go up, that starts to affect your economy. So we have to show that we can properly think through these things and come up with something we put forward, and people can then question, they can criticize, they can actually see that we do mean what we say, and we do.
Yes, and that honesty.
We mean, Charlie, to return opportunity to entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
We mean to cut the size of the state, and we need to ensure that those people who want to take responsibility, who want to employ other people, who want to take risk, they are given the opportunity to do that. And when they do that, we're not going to take their money off them.
Yes.
They've paid the tax on it, and they should keep it, and they
Yes.
should leave it to whoever they want to leave it to. We don't want a malign state, which I think has now become the enemy of the people. And I think HMRC is the most vile organ of the state. I come across them a lot because, again, they tend to weaponize. If your politics isn't what they like, you tend to find you come under increased scrutiny because they'd love to find you've done something wrong and hold you up by the scruff of the neck as an example to everybody else, which is what they tend to do with this myriad of rules and laws. And they can always, by the way, find a law that you or I have broken today, some petty, stupid, puerile little law that defies common sense, which everybody breaks every day. But those people who are in the club don't get challenged. Those people who are outside the club, there's always a rule to trip you up.
Of course.
And it was Tacitus who said the more rules, the more corrupt the state.
Yes.
So there's all sorts of ancient historical
Precedent.
sayings which sum it all up very well. But so I think we've got to cut that away, empower common sense, empower people who want to take risk and work hard. We've got to stop this welfarism, this indolence. We can't be rewarding indolence and people who've never contributed over those people who actually make a contribution to Britain. So sorry, we are going to return to some pretty basic philosophies which reward those who contribute most.
And I think it is that honesty and that promise of a country where those who work hard and are honest themselves will be rewarded and won't be, undercut, won't be taxed into oblivion, won't be, demographically replaced via mass immigration. It is that message that is resonating with the youth of this country. I know it certainly resonates with me. And I think
again,
that's why
the youth of this country can look at how dishonest it is. You only have to look, and I've missed Prime Minister's questions today. I was busy at the Public Accounts Committee on Monday, so I missed Starmer having a grilling on Monday. We called him back. I actually voted to call him back because he didn't give honest answers. You get half-truths, you get half-lies, you get... the whole thing is just a joke. And they clearly made a decision that Peter Mandelson, and I spoke in Parliament about this, was the right man, in their opinion. Peter Mandelson is one of the architects of the downfall of Britain, along with Blair, Campbell, and Derry Irvine and Gordon Brown. So these people are responsible for a lot of the damage that's been done. Arguably, David Cameron loved Tony Blair and emulated what he tried to do, and a lot of the legislation which is very deficient is Tory legislation. So to look at Mandelson, and clearly if you listen to Ollie Robbins, the dishonesty comes, and I said, look, here's a man, he's got a track record of financial misfeasance. He is close to Russia, he's close to China. He basically visited Epstein's Island. Trump called him a moron, and he called Trump rude names as well. So why on earth would he be, other than the fact that his tentacles go deep into the Labour Party, and this pervasive rot which has been effectively created by that group of people, his tentacles were going to go in to try and continue that process. So I think it was decided they were going to appoint him, and if you listen to Ollie Robbins, they then had to make and justify that appointment, even though he had failed vetting. And quite rightly, he should never have been appointed. And I said this in the chamber. You can actually find the clip where I stood up and spoke about it. It just defied common sense, it defied logic, and it exemplifies everything that is wrong with the current sort of two-party system, which has become rotten and dishonest.
So on this question,
so that's what the young should look at.
Yes.
Where's the logic? Now, there must have been better candidates than Peter Mandelson to appoint to the most important relationship that we have with the most powerful country on earth.
Indeed.
Come on.
Yes. So on this question from one of our supporters, what's the best way for Generation Z to get involved with Restore? P.S. Thanks for giving my generation hope, Rupert.
Well, I think you two should answer that. You're Gen Z.
Well, I was going to say,
Z?
I've got grey hairs, Rupert, so I'm millennial.
He's a Gen Z.
I am a Gen Zer.
Yes.
And to that question, I would say, Great Yarmouth is our priority up until the 7th of May. But after that, there is going to be a project launching that will seek to address that question very directly. So stay tuned on that. I think it's going to be very, very exciting because we do have such a huge amount of support among those under the age of 30. And just to very quickly add to that, you mentioned Zach Polanski earlier, Rupert, and I fully agree with you that I can't understand how anyone could watch that video.
I just can't help getting
of
out of
him.
my mind the GIMP suit every time I think of it.
And everything else that the man actually believes in and stands for and seeks to do to our country. I fully agree that it's a mental kind of program that he's offering. But what has to be acknowledged is that there is a reason that half of under 30s and indeed under 50s are thinking about voting for him. And that reason is that he is really, in the eyes of many people, the only political leader in the country that is speaking the language of the ordinary person, that is addressing the fact that many people feel as though they are running to keep up, that feel that the culture in this country is becoming increasingly oppressive and against them, can't pay their bills, can't pay for housing. These are problems that many people, certainly those under the age of 30, can relate to. And so they hear Zach Polanski speaking in those terms and they think, finally, someone is listening to me. And I think the analysis doesn't go further than that. And if as you say, that many people were to look into the actual prospects of a Green government and what they would do to the country, many of them would turn 180 degrees and run the other way. Which is why, which is why it's so essential, in my view, for us to understand that and say to those people who are thinking Green, who are thinking of voting Green, who are not ideological leftists, but who are people who are just sick to death of Labour, the Tories, and indeed Reform, say, look, we understand why you're thinking of voting for this party, because at the very least they are addressing the problems that you feel this country has. But actually, the right response to those problems is not more immigration, more tax, more regulation, and all of the other things that the Green Party is actually offering.
Banning right-wingers.
Banning right-wingers, reducing the speed limit on the motorway to 55 miles an hour. I mean, all of these ridiculous policies that would do nothing but immiserate the country even more. These are not the solutions to the country's problems, because actually what that represents is more of the same on steroids. It is Blairism on steroids. That's what Zach Polanski represents. And what is actually needed is not more of the same. It is a reversal of all of those things.
That's
reversing
right,
immigration,
right.
reversing regulation, reversing tax, reducing all these things, and just basically saying enough to all of this.
I mean, Zach Polanski, in my view, is always on transmit anyway. I mean, he's and what he says is palpable rubbish. But, I think I'm right in saying he's got a track record prior to going into politics of convincing people of things that weren't true.
Quite.
And I suspect that's what's been happening to the Gen Zers. They're falling for a man who is capable of deluding people to believe things that are simply untrue. And I think clearly he's got a track record in that, and it hasn't changed. So if I were people, I'd pinch yourselves and have a look at the reality of it. But you're right. His policies would lead to economic chaos. They would lead to the destruction of Britain, and they would lead to collapsing standards of living in a nanosecond.
Indeed. Rupert, what's your favourite thing about Great Yarmouth?
I just love the people in Great Yarmouth. That's why I went east. They're honest. They speak the truth. They criticise if they think you're doing something wrong, which I think is fair enough. They've been badly let down by the post-war elite. And they are proper people, as Harry Redknapp would say. So I love Great Yarmouth. As I've said to them, I would love to be there more. But my job, I think, is to encourage this bottom-up movement, such as we're seeing in Great Yarmouth. And I will be there on those days, I've said, with everybody else. So we need to all collectively try and win those local elections. But equally, I think my job, as I said to them during my campaign, my job is far more powerful in Parliament, and what we've achieved in Parliament, not only speaking in Parliament, but actually changing the Overton window in Parliament on a lot of issues that people were frightened to talk about, but also sitting on the Public Accounts Committee and understanding the depth of the sort of unstructure of Britain, the failure of the civil service, and the lack of accountability, the sort of incompetence incompetence breeds incompetence, by the way. So I think my job is to lead the top-down charge, because the only way we can rebuild Britain, and this is the answer to the question, is the bottom-up winning and then the top-down winning. Because we can't achieve what we need to achieve without controlling Parliament. And another of my issues with Farage was he tried to whip us all to vote for proportional representation. Well, I didn't vote for proportional representation, and he remonstrated with me over that. The reason I didn't vote for it is we've got to win the next election. So that's why it's so important we get the popular movement. People can see that we've got to win it. And not just up the coastal seats, the red wall seats, the rural seats, and Labour's going to get eviscerated in the rural seats. They've done less than nothing. They put on APT, they put on they put on tax on small businesses. They're having a crack at country sports. They're trying to break up the fabric and the culture of country life because most of them are urbanites and they don't understand the importance of the country. And people like to go to the country. It looks great. Well, it won't look great if all the farmers go bust. It won't. There won't be prosperity if all the small businesses have to be sold to pay the tax to Rachel Reeves to go and spunk up against the wall on welfare or illegal migrants or people who've never actually contributed to Britain. So I think it's an incredibly important mix. We get the overall majority in Parliament, which gives you the ultimate power, but then we build bottom up with people who represent local communities. Then we've got the formula, I think, that can actually deliver for Britain. So it's so important that we fill all of those parts of the equation. But Great Yarmouth is the bedrock. They're my bedrock.
Yeah.
They have elected me. They've trusted me. They didn't know me from Adam when I went there. I think the people are fantastic, and that's not just true in Great Yarmouth. It's probably true up and down the coast on the east. Norfolk's a great county. That's always a very sound place. I think they're very down to earth and honest. So the answer to your question, I think that's why we had to go east. That's the bedrock of honest, decent England. And that bedrock, I'm hoping, is going to be the foundation for what we do across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And your favourite pub in Great Yarmouth?
Well, I do like going to the Wetherspoons in the middle of Great Yarmouth. I've been there many times. A pint of IPA is, compared with London, remarkably good value. Even though I'm not capable of drinking huge quantities of beer, I enjoy going there, and people are always very friendly.
Yeah.
Generally as they are in Great Yarmouth. So yeah, that's my favourite watering hole there.
Very good. And final question, you touched on this already, but do you think that the next general election is our last chance before we cross into something we can never recover from?
Yes, I do. I think definitively the British people have to stand up and deliver a formula such as I've just outlined if they want to take their country back. Now, we can stand up and we can offer them that opportunity. I'm not saying they have to take it if they're comfortable with the way in which we're governed at the moment and they think everything is fine and they want to go on with their water bottle and their Lululemon underwear on, going into the gym every day and feeling very comfortable and pleased with life. By all means, go ahead and vote for that. But I tell you, that is not going to deliver them either the sort of quality of life or indeed the security that I think we need now. And we've got to get real. So I think we've got to do it by 29. I can't guarantee it's not too late already. We've been printing money. We've been running up debt. We've been undermining productive Britain. We've been rewarding welfare. We've been basically buying votes everywhere. The whole political system, and if you remember, I gave a speech at the Reform Party conference in 24 where I gave a quote from Socrates, which effectively outlined the weaknesses in democracy. Because democracy, although I think Winston Churchill designed it, called it the least bad form of government, because it does have within it the roots of manipulation, of crime effectively taking over, of managerialism. It's got risks there, and we have to guard against those. And I think in the past, people in Britain were very logical, very commonsensical. You had a vocationally driven civil service which actually did deliver for the people. That's gone wrong. They've now become a sort of self-serving class who are completely undeserving, in my view. Bit like the NHS, as I've said in the past, that's become corrupted. I mean, it's so rotten within the NHS. There's so much waste. The medical malpractice and negligence claims are through the roof because we're bringing in unqualified people who are doing operations and bodging them. We're leaving qualified British people unemployed. I mean, you couldn't make it up, Charlie. So I think there's so much wrong. Everyone can see it. And we're going to give them an opportunity. They may not take it. If they don't take it, that's fine. I'll ride off into the sunset and enjoy my ill-gotten gains for whatever time I've got left. But I had to try, and we've all got to try. And I think credit to all of you and all of my team who've stood up and prepared to be counted. We're giving people an opportunity to vote for something different. If they don't want to take that opportunity, I respect that. But I think it's the last chance to do it. And we're gonna give it a go, and hopefully people will do what I say and not just rely on us and say, oh, well, there they are, we'll give them a vote, but we're not actually going to do anything. No, people have got to get involved, particularly the young people with the energy. As I said before, my grandmother used to say, the old are wise, the young are able. So we have to get that combination going.
Very good. Rupert, Lewis, it has been a pleasure, as always. Thank you for joining me. And thank you all for watching. If you're not already a member of Restore Britain, do join us. It's only £20 a year. And we hope to see many of you in Great Yarmouth, certainly on the 2nd and 7th of May. Thank you very much.